We have a lot to cover in today's video, including the latest trade talk around Bruins forward Jake Debrusk, who we know wants out of Boston. We also have potential word on a return for Tuukka Rask with the Bruins organization. We have more updates on Evander, Kane, as well as the Montreal Canadiens. Some updates on their search for a new general manager, as well as potential moves they might be making in the not too distant future. Will they consider moving Carey Price if they're actually going to go down the road of a full rebuild? We also have word from the NHL waiver wire, another suspension, some injuries, all that and more coming up next. Welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of NHL news and rumors. We really have a lot to cover here today, so let's dive right in and get started. First up, we have some news from the NHL waiver wire. We have another claim and another player on waivers. Yesterday, the Sabres had placed defenseman Christian Wolanin on waivers, and he's been claimed by his former club, the Los Angeles Kings. Now, of course, usually within a certain time frame, when you have a player like that you lose on waivers, you do have first right to make a claim if they end up back on waivers like that. So that's likely how they were able to get the claim. I don't know if any other teams put their claims in as well or not. Hard to say what happens here. I know Wolanin didn't get much of an opportunity with the Kings before. Like I said, ever since he had that major injury a couple of years back when he was still with Ottawa, he just doesn't seem to be quite the same since. He's been struggling to find a home basically and get any kind of consistency going. So hopefully this time around in Los Angeles, he'll get more of an opportunity. And then also on waivers today, which is an unconditional waiver claim, the Maple Leafs have Kirill Semyonov on waivers for contract termination. So the 27-year-old who they had signed as a free agent out of Russia, got into 9 American Hockey League games this year, put up 9 points. It was 1 goal, 8 assists, but still seems to be productive at that level. Got called up, played 3 NHL games, but didn't have any points. Obviously, between he and the Leafs, they've determined that it really wasn't a great fit, and I assume he must have plans to go back and play in the KHL. So another, attempt that the Leafs had made there. Some of these work out, some of them don't. They've had some that have gone very well. Like Mikheyev worked out pretty good, but then Barabanov, Semyonov, like some of them worked out. It seems like they have at least one player they seem to bring over from Russia just about every year lately, and some work better than others. But he's going to be terminated and can go sign as a free agent wherever he wishes. On some injury updates, I know the Seattle Kraken have been hit hard with injuries. They had to call up a few players today, but they're without guys like Chris Driedger, the goaltender, Kelly Yarncroke. Eberle's out now. Schwartz, they've really been hit hard. They've been, a pretty good winning streak as well, playing against some of the top teams in the NHL too. So they could be, a team to watch here moving forward if they can keep this up, but it's going to be very, very challenging given the circumstances that they're now facing. And of course, we have another suspension which came in shortly after I'd recorded yesterday's video, so I'm sure most of you are aware of this by now. But Kings forward Brendan Lemieux has been suspended for 5 games for biting against Senators captain and forward Brady Tkachuk. So, of course, that was a few days ago. Placed via Zoom, which is considered basically an in-person hearing, took place yesterday. And the announcement came out last night. But like I said, yesterday's video was already recorded and posted by the time the news broke. So I wanted to mention it here today. One other quick thing with that, obviously we knew going into this being an in-person hearing that the NHL would have the right for 5 games. They said essentially, I know Brady was saying his hands were bit multiple times during that skirmish. They're essentially going by what they could see from the video evidence. So they could clearly see something that he bit him once. Lemieux's argument was that the marks were from Brady punching him in the teeth. So I don't know. To me, it's kind of a dirty move. It certainly looked like he did bite him for sure. I can't say how many times, but the one kind of tidbit, though, that's interesting with this that I thought was kind of funny, not exactly something you'd really want to be known for, but of course, I'm sure most of you know his father, Claude Lemieux, who's a current NHL agent, a former NHL player, had a pretty long, relatively successful NHL career, played a long time with the Montreal Canadiens, as well as a few other teams before he retired. Brendan and Claude Lemieux are the only father and son NHL duo that share a thing here, that they're the only ones ever both being suspended for biting. Actually, his father, Claude Lemieux, did the same thing during the Stanley Cup final way back in 1986 when Montreal was battling the Calgary Flames. So not, like I said, kind of a unique tidbit, probably something you'd rather not be known for. But yeah, it seems to run in the family. Now, another interesting news piece today out of Vancouver, where agent Kevin Epp, who represents Travis Hamonic, was on the Donnie and Daly show talking about how Basically, the whole market of Vancouver and the media is extremely negative and toxic, and nobody wants to play in Vancouver. Like, he basically blames the media for being so negative on the whole situation. Of course, the Canucks are having a terrible losing season. They even asked him point blank. So you're telling us that the media is to blame here, making the situation worse and being so negative. But when you don't really have anything positive to talk about, when the team is doing terrible, like, that does not make that challenging. You are expected to be objective and give your honest analysis of the team when the things are going badly. Like, you can't sugarcoat it. Essentially, he was going on that, the media is so negative. The whole market is, I think he said, hostile and difficult, and that it's doing damage, and that they're just reporting clickbait. And you know what? I can't speak for all Vancouver media. Obviously, in every market, there can be some of that. You're trying to create headlines, so to speak. But at the end of the day, I really don't think that what he's saying is really holds much value here. Like, to me, it's kind of sad. I mean, you have to expect the media to report on things objectively, and when there's nothing positive to talk about, what do you expect? Now, when it comes to Travis Hamonic, you have to think his play could be considered damaging because he hasn't been good this year. Although he is not going to be with the club on their recent travels, I believe it's been told that he is fully vaccinated, I guess, but I'm not sure what's going on with Hamonic exactly, but it is possible based on everything that Eppa's going on about. Wouldn't be surprising if Vancouver does try to trade him. I don't think that's really worked out, and they're probably regretting giving that contract, especially where they get the second year, and obviously everything that delayed his season getting started. It's certainly another situation in Vancouver that absolutely has not worked out. Now, when it comes to the Montreal Canadiens, lots of talk about the GM job, lots of talk about potential moves they might be making. There's certainly a hot topic here after owner Jeff Molson has basically cleaned house here a few days ago. It's believed that new executive vice president of hockey ops, Jeff Gorton, will be available to the media likely on Friday, I believe is what it's looking like. It could be sooner, but I believe Friday is what they're kind of pegging here as his media availability day. I suppose we'll likely get a few more answers around plans on the GM search and all that, but we have heard from Patrick Waugh, who has now gone publicly proclaiming his interest in the team. And I believe he even said something to the effect that there is be no harm in the team talking to him or something like that. I can't know his exact words. I don't want to quote him and be wrong, but he's gone public to make it known, expressing his interest in the job, which I do find a little bit comical in a way. We still don't have any indication that the Habs have contacted him to be on the short list of candidates for that. And as I've said before, I do highly suspect he'll eventually find an opportunity to be involved, and I think he probably would have a preference to be involved with Montreal, but I don't see that working out where he would not have full control and working under Jeff Gorton. I'm a little bit surprised in a way that he's expressing interest, because I just think he's too much of a personality and control freak to probably work well with Gorton, so I really don't see that being the case. For entertainment purposes only, I'd love to see it, because I think, like I said, he's a big personality. He has a lot of interesting things to say. I would think it would be good for the NHL if he's involved in some kind of role somewheres. I just don't know that Montreal is going to go down that road. We also heard some comments from Martin Brodeur talking to some media members saying that he's not really interested in leaving New Jersey. I believe he talked to Renaud Lavoie of TVA. So I don't know if he'll change his mind or not, or exactly if he'll be on that list. Like, he was rumored to be a candidate, but at this time it looks like he's not interested in leaving the New Jersey Devils. But the other names that we're still hearing is the common ones. The leading contenders seem to be Danny Briere, Matthew Darche. There's still some talk about Luongo. I haven't heard much about Roberto Luongo saying not interested or anything like that. So until they come out and kind of proclaim themselves out of the running, don't know that. Then, of course, there's Madden out of the Anaheim organization, too. So we'll see. Haven't really heard any other new names popping up, but those are still the main names being mentioned. Like I said, we'll probably get further clarity on that situation when we get to the media availability with Jeff Gorton. I would suspect Dominic Ducharme is likely going to be safe for a little while. I'm not completely convinced that he'll coach the Habs beyond the current season, but to me, it makes a lot of sense that Gorton comes in, gets to know Ducharme, see how things go for a little while at least for the next couple months, get the new GM in place, and then they can make a decision before the end of the year. At this point, the season is almost at the point where you could say it's pretty much lost. You might as well just let things go so you can really truly evaluate everybody that's there, and then decide if he's your guy or you want to go in a different direction, and they can hire their own coach, which is most likely the scenario that many expect to play out. But the other big thing too is, what moves are the Habs going to make? We talked yesterday about a potential rebuild, and we had looked at comments from Brendan Gallagher, a longtime player, and basically, even though he doesn't wear the C, you could say he's essentially the on-ice leader with the Montreal Canadiens, given the fact that their actual captain, Shea, is on LTIR and likely going to remain there for the rest of his career. But I know Pierre LeBrun had a piece out today looking at the fact of, is Carey Price going to want to stick around? Is a 34-year-old goaltender with on-again, off-again knee injuries that he's battled, is he going to want to be part of a rebuild? And it doesn't make sense on either side to keep him there. The big problem, though, is he has a fair bit of term on his contract, and he makes over $10 million. So the Montreal Canadiens would have to eat a lot of money in that contract. They can retain up to 50% on a trade. You can even get it down further if you retain 50% and have a third-party broker. But then you're going to be paying a broker to basically take on some of that salary too, and it gets expensive. You're going to be giving up assets to facilitate deals. But personally, I do think that it makes a ton of sense for the Habs if they go down a rebuild, that you're not going to want to keep all these veteran guys around. You're going to want to keep a couple, but many feel that guys like Gallagher, maybe Jeff Petry's one that could be a little bit more tradable, Mike Hoffman, maybe Toffoli if they wanted to do that. Those guys I think would have more value. They don't have such big money on the contract. They have some term, but not like a ton of it. They would be easier to trade this year if they decided to go down that road. I think Gallagher's contract would be challenging because he's making over $6 million, but because of the kind of character and grit and everything he brings, a contending team might really love the possibility of adding him before the playoffs. So we'll see. But a guy like Price, to me, that would not happen anytime soon. If that were to happen, it would almost guarantee to have to be in the offseason. But again, just like last year when there was some doubt over his future in Montreal, I really think it's a pretty good possibility we're going to be talking about it again by next offseason as well. And I kind of wonder, looking back at the whole expansion draft, like I said before, I really wonder if Price really wanted to go to Seattle, and that's why he was waiving his no-move clause. Like I said, maybe he was convinced with knowing everything that was likely going to be going down here. He probably had an inside track that Weber likely was going to be done, and some other guys might be leaving. Maybe he thought it was best after a run like that for him to move on too. Said his wife's from the Seattle area. He grew up not far off in BC, so it would be kind of pretty much almost as close to home as he's going to get. Between Seattle or Vancouver would be the only places he could really kind of call close to a hometown team. I really wonder if his heart was in that kind of position that he wanted to go. We'll probably never know the answer to that. Maybe someday when he's retired, he might reveal that if that was the case. Just makes me really, really wonder, that's all. But I do think that's going to be something they're going to have to explore here in the offseason. I don't see anything like that going down this year. During the season. A quick update on Evander Kane as well. Apparently, there's some updates on his court case where the judge has ruled that his wife has to undergo a psychological evaluation. So in the interim, his child still remains in his custody. And because of that, he's not going to be joining the AHL team for San Jose immediately. He apparently won't be traveling with them. It sounds like he's made special arrangements that he will report to them and will be a part of their team. But during his court battle, that he's sounds like he might only be playing home games. I'm not really sure how that's going to work. There wasn't a ton of detail. It indicate here in the information that was released today that he had special arrangements made that he talked to the courts about going through this. So even though he has reported to the AHL, he won't be playing a ton, so I'm not sure how quickly or how fast this is going to end up in a trade, but I would wonder how things are going to go in case he is traded, given that child and all those extra circumstances that he's dealing with outside of hockey. Is that going to be an issue? Would he report to a different team? How's that all going to work? It could be an extra X factor here that none of us really factored in before. And we also got word as well that Tuukka Rask is getting close to returning, and it's hopefully going to be with the Bruins again. I've even seen comments from like Don Sweeney, Cam Neely talking about the fact that they're optimistic he could rejoin the franchise. And with all the trade talk around Jake Debrusk and the fact that he wants out right now, that very well might be the way they create the necessary salary cap space to make it happen. Obviously, at this point, they're running with Swayman and Ullmark. Obviously, Swayman would be eligible to go to the minors, even though that might not be, the preferred choice here. But Boston's been a little bit of a, not so good stretch of hockey right now. Many feel they still have a very deep, very well experienced team and can get things turned around. And a Debrusk trade very well might bring back a player that could be of interest to get on the roster right away. It may not be like a futures package. I've seen an article today suggesting a possible trade to the Seattle Kraken in exchange for a player like Mason Appleton. Appleton has struggled to fit in well with the Kraken organization, has been injured a little bit this year, and hasn't really put up a ton of points. But he's a player who had a breakout year last year in Winnipeg and had been building his case there and getting a bigger role. So you have to wonder if that might be the kind of player Boston would want. They're not going to want to take back a winger or a player to replace Debrusk with a ton of money, and somebody like Appleton who's making a little bit less might be ideal. I know there's some talk around Dylan Strome, but I'm not sure that's going to happen right now. And it really boils down to where he ends up going, because we've heard there's a lot of interest in this player from around the league, including teams like the Canucks, Flames, Oilers, Rangers, Blues. I've heard the Senators on different sources too, and others. Like there's at least 8 to 10 teams that reportedly already have touched base with the Bruins and made calls to initiate the conversation. So there won't be any shortage here. But like I said, I would suspect Seattle could be a good landing spot though, between Appleton or maybe the Bruins finally get another left shot D who can move the puck like a Vince Dunn. I mean, I'm not sure Seattle would do that, but I can see there be some pieces there that they would have interest in. So if they want to bring back Tuukka Rask, they need to find some money. Debrusk wants out, so that might be the answer to accomplish that. But I think part of the reason why the Bruins have been so reluctant to move on from Debrusk this whole time is the fact that the 2015 draft, where they had those 3 consecutive picks, he's the only one that's really played any significant amount of NHL games. The only one that seems to have a decent future in the NHL. And if they move on from him, it kind of shows that that draft was a complete waste and a bust, and I think there might be, reluctant because of that, but we'll see where things go. Obviously, we're going to expect a Debrusk trade sometime here in the near future. Let me know where you think he goes, what might be a good return for him from the NHL team that makes the acquisition. Let me know your thoughts on everything discussed down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.